You ever have one of those moments where your entire life just splits clean in half? Where there's a before and an after and you can never go back? Yeah, I had one of those 3 weeks ago. And let me tell you, what happened next destroyed 2 marriages, exposed 35 years of lies, and brought an entire family crashing down like a house of cards. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. I'm 32 years old. I work as a financial analyst for a mid-sized consulting firm. Nothing glamorous, nothing that's going to make headlines, but I pull in a comfortable $95,000 a year. It's a good life, stable, the kind of life most people would be grateful for. But to my wife's family, I might as well have been working at a gas station. See, my wife, she's 30, and she comes from money. Not just money, old money. The kind where her father built a commercial real estate empire worth somewhere in the 8 figures, and her mother has never worked a single day in her entire life. Never had to. Never wanted to. Just floated through life on her husband's success, throwing parties and playing tennis and looking down on people like me. Her mother has hated me from the very first moment we met. It wasn't anything I did, it was what I wasn't. I wasn't from the right family, didn't go to an Ivy League school, didn't have a trust fund or connections or any of the things that mattered in her world. My crime, the thing she could never forgive me for, was being middle class and having the audacity to fall in love with her daughter anyway. We've been married 5 years now, together for 7, and let me tell you, her mom has made every single one of those years absolutely fascinating in the worst possible way. Backhanded compliments at every holiday gathering. "Oh, you're still driving that Honda? How practical." Little comments about how her daughter could have done better, could have married someone with more ambition, more status, more money. Once, at Thanksgiving dinner, surrounded by family and friends, she actually said out loud that she'd hoped her daughter would marry someone with more ambition. Just said it. Like I wasn't sitting right there, and I let it slide. I always let it slide. My wife would apologize later, say her mom was just like that, say she didn't mean it the way it sounded. And I'd move on because I loved her. Or at least, I thought I did. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. I came home early from work. A meeting got canceled, one of those rare afternoons where you actually get to leave the office before dark, and I walked into our apartment expecting to find it empty. Instead, I heard voices in the living room. My wife and her mother talking. I was about to announce myself, call out that I was home, when I heard a number that made me freeze in the hallway. $1 million. Cash in your account by Friday if you file for divorce this week. I stood there in my own hallway holding my briefcase, not breathing, just listening. My mother-in-law's voice continued, crisp and businesslike, like she was negotiating a real estate deal instead of trying to buy her daughter's marriage. "You've wasted 5 years on him. You're 30 now. Your window for finding someone appropriate is closing. I'm offering you a fresh start. Take the money, divorce him, and I'll introduce you to the Henderson boy. He just made partner at his father's firm." I waited. I waited for my wife to shut her down, to defend me, to tell her mother that our marriage wasn't some transaction that could be bought and sold. I waited to hear her say no, to hear her say that she loved me, that we were a team, that her mother was out of line. Instead, what I heard was silence. Long, heavy silence. And then my wife's voice, quiet but absolutely clear. "Mom, I don't know. That's a lot to think about." My mother-in-law didn't miss a beat. "What's there to think about? He makes 90-something thousand a year. I'm offering you more than 10 years of his salary to walk away. You'd be stupid not to take it." More silence. I felt like I was underwater, like the whole world had gone muffled and distant. And then my wife spoke again. 3 words that ended everything. I'll take it. My mother-in-law actually laughed. Laughed. Like this was the funniest, most sensible thing she'd heard all day. Finally, I knew you'd come to your senses. That's when I stepped into the living room. Both of them went absolutely white, like they'd seen a ghost. "Hey, honey," I said, keeping my voice calm, almost cheerful. "Hi, Mom." I always called her Mom, just to annoy her. "Don't mind me. Just came home early. Meeting got canceled." My wife started stammering immediately. "That wasn't... You didn't hear... We were just talking hypothetically." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Hypothetically about divorcing me for $1 million? Interesting hypothetical. My mother-in-law recovered faster than my wife did. She actually sat up straighter, adjusting her designer jacket like she was proud of what she'd just done. "Yes, I offered her money to leave you, and she accepted. You should be grateful. At least now you know where you stand." I turned to my wife. She still wouldn't meet my eyes, looking at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at me. "Is that true?" I asked. "You're taking the money?" She finally looked up, and there was something in her expression I'd never seen before. Something defiant, something cold. Maybe I am, maybe Mom's right, maybe I have been settling. Settling. That word just hung there in the air between us. 5 years of marriage, 7 years together, and I was something she'd been settling for. I didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't throw anything or storm out. I just nodded slowly, taking it all in. "Okay," I said. "If that's your decision, I respect it." My mother-in-law looked genuinely surprised. I think she'd been expecting drama, maybe begging, maybe me falling apart and making a scene. Instead, I walked calmly to our bedroom, opened the nightstand drawer, and pulled out a manila envelope I'd been keeping there for months. I walked back out and looked at both of them. "Before you finalize anything," I said, "I think your father deserves to see this." I handed the envelope to my wife. She opened it, confused, pulling out papers and scanning them. Inside were DNA test results and a letter. "Let me explain. About 8 months ago, my father-in-law asked me for a favor. He was updating his will and wanted to include some genetic health information for his descendants. He's got a family history of heart disease, wanted to make sure everything was documented properly. He asked if I could help him understand how to get one of those ancestry DNA tests done. Simple enough, right? I helped him set it up. He did the test. Results came back. And that's when everything got interesting. According to the DNA test, he wasn't my wife's biological father. My father-in-law called me completely confused and absolutely devastated. Asked me what it meant, what could have gone wrong. I explained it as gently as I could. According to the DNA, they shared no genetic markers. 0. He broke down on the phone. I told him I'd look into it quietly, that maybe there was an error, maybe something got mixed up at the lab. But I'm a financial analyst. I'm very good at digging through information, connecting dots, following trails. I pulled records, I made some discreet calls. And I found out that around the time my wife was conceived, my mother-in-law had a month-long affair with her tennis instructor. The timeline matched perfectly. I sat on this information for 8 months. I didn't tell my father-in-law what I'd found because I honestly wasn't sure what to do with it. I didn't want to blow up a family. I didn't want to hurt him more than he was already hurting. But now my wife had just agreed to take $1 million to abandon our marriage. Now her mother sat in my living room looking smug and victorious, like she'd just won some kind of game. Now felt like exactly the right time. My wife read the letter. Her face went through about 17 different emotions in 10 seconds. Confusion, shock, denial, horror. "What is this?" she whispered. "DNA results showing your dad isn't your biological father," I said calmly, "and my research into who probably is. You should ask your mom about her tennis instructor from 31 years ago." My mother-in-law grabbed the papers out of my wife's hands, scanning them frantically, her face going absolutely pale. "This is fake. This is some kind of trick." "It's not," I said. "Your husband took the test himself. Those are his actual results. I've been sitting on this for 8 months because I didn't want to hurt anyone. But you know what? You've spent 5 years treating me like garbage. Your daughter just sold our marriage for a check. So, I think it's time your husband knows what kind of woman he's been married to for 35 years. My mother-in-law stood up, shaking. "You wouldn't dare." "Already done," I said. I emailed him copies 2 minutes before I walked into this room. Check his phone if you don't believe me. Right on cue, we all heard a car pulling up outside, fast, tires screeching slightly, a door slamming. My father-in-law burst through our front door, face red, hands shaking, holding his phone up like it was evidence at a trial. "Is it true?" he demanded, looking straight at his wife. "Is it true?" What followed was the most spectacular implosion of a family I've ever witnessed in my entire life. And I had a front row seat to all of it. The confrontation in our living room lasted about 2 hours. 2 solid hours of screaming, crying, accusations, and revelations. My father-in-law demanded answers, demanded the truth after 35 years. My mother-in-law tried every trick in the book. First came denial. Absolute, flat denial that any of it was real. Then deflection, trying to change the subject, trying to make it about something else. Then crying, sobbing about how unfair this all was. Then claiming the tests were rigged, that I'd somehow fabricated evidence because I was vindictive. But here's the thing about DNA. It doesn't lie. And here's the thing about my father-in-law. He's a businessman who built an empire worth millions on facts and numbers and cold, hard data. He wasn't buying the emotional manipulation. Not for a second. 35 years, he kept saying, over and over like he couldn't process it. 35 years I thought she was mine. My wife tried to play peacemaker, tried to calm everyone down. "Dad, can we just calm down and talk about this rationally?" He turned on her, and I'd never seen him look at her that way before. "Rationally? You were going to take $1 million to divorce your husband. Your mother's been lying to me for 3.5 decades, and you want rational?" That's when my mother-in-law made a critical error. She went on the attack instead of staying defensive. "So, what if I had an affair? You were always working, you neglected me, and that man, he actually paid attention to me." My father-in-law stared at her. "So you admit it?" She realized her mistake too late, backpedaling frantically. That's not what I meant." "You just admitted it in front of witnesses," he said. Then he looked at me. "You recorded this, didn't you?" I held up my phone. "I'm not stupid." My father-in-law nodded once, turned around and walked out. Didn't say goodbye to his wife. Didn't say goodbye to his daughter, just left. The door, closing behind him, was the loudest sound I've ever heard. My wife immediately turned on me, tears streaming down her face but her voice full of rage. "How could you do this? You destroyed my family." I looked at her, really looked at her. "Your mother offered you money to leave me. You said yes. Your mother lied to your father for 35 years. I just told the truth. If that destroyed your family, maybe your family was built on a pretty shaky foundation." "I was never actually going to take the money," she said. I almost laughed. You said, "I'll take it." I heard you, clear as day. I was exploring options. And now I'm exploring mine, I said. I want a divorce. She blinked like I'd just spoken a foreign language. What? No, you can't divorce me. I was supposed to divorce you. The entitlement. My God, the entitlement in that statement. Pretty sure it works both ways, I said. I'll have my lawyer contact yours. You should probably stay with your mom tonight, or what's left of that arrangement. She started crying then, but it wasn't sad crying. It was angry crying, frustrated crying, the crying of someone who just lost control of a situation they thought they had in the palm of their hand. This isn't how this was supposed to go. Life's funny like that, I said. I spent that night alone in our apartment, and honestly, I slept better than I had in months. The weight of that secret, of knowing what I knew and carrying it around, had been crushing me. Now it was out. Now everyone knew the truth, and whatever happened next, at least it would be built on reality instead of lies. The next few days were absolute chaos. My father-in-law filed for divorce immediately. After 35 years of marriage, he was done. Finished. Apparently, he'd been having doubts for years. Little things that didn't quite add up, but he'd never had proof. Now he did, and there was no going back. My mother-in-law tried to contest it, hired an expensive lawyer who claimed the DNA evidence was illegally obtained. Her lawyer quickly told her that wasn't how it worked. My father-in-law had taken the test voluntarily. The results were his to share with whoever he wanted. Meanwhile, my wife was bombarding me with texts. First, they were angry. "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy." Then they turned sad. "Please, can we just talk about this?" Then manipulative. "Don't you remember how good we were together? We can get past this." Then threatening. "I'll tell everyone you were abusive. I'll destroy your reputation." That last one? Yeah, that's when I got a lawyer and stopped responding entirely. You don't negotiate with someone who threatens to lie about abuse. You document everything and protect yourself. By day 3, my mother-in-law was in full damage control mode, and apparently her strategy was to confront me directly, because she showed up at my office. My office? Security called up, sounding confused. "There's a woman here saying she's your mother-in-law. She's pretty insistent about seeing you." I went down to the lobby, and there she was, dressed to the nines like she was attending a charity gala instead of confronting the man who'd just exposed her decade-long deception. Designer suit, perfect hair, jewelry that probably cost more than my car. "We need to talk," she said, privately. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said. "I'll make it worth your while." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "Are you trying to bribe me now? That's your move?" "Everyone has a price," she said, like this was some universal truth. "Name yours to make this all go away." "Lady," I said, "you couldn't afford my price. Try me." "Okay, time machine. Go back and not be a terrible person. Think you can swing that?" She went red, her composure cracking. "You think you're so clever? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm dealing with a woman who cheated on her husband, lied about the paternity of her child for 3 decades, and tried to bribe her daughter into divorcing a man who did nothing wrong. Did I miss anything?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "I will destroy you. I have connections you can't even imagine." "Cool," I said. "Looking forward to it. Now, please leave before I have security escort you out." This conversation is definitely being recorded by building cameras, by the way. She left, but not before throwing one more threat over her shoulder. This isn't over. But it was. It was very much just beginning. The divorce proceedings kicked into high gear. My lawyer is fantastic. I found her through a colleague who went through a messy split, and she came highly recommended. She laid out my situation pretty clearly in our first meeting. Your wife brought virtually no assets into the marriage. You've been the primary earner. The apartment lease is in your name only. She has no legal claim to most of what you own. So, what's the catch? I asked. The complicating factor is the length of the marriage. 5 years is enough that she could argue for some spousal support. Depends on the judge. How much are we talking? Could be minimal. Could be a year or two of partial support while she gets on her feet. But given the circumstances, her agreeing to take money to divorce you, which you have recorded, I think we can argue bad faith and minimize any payout. Fine, I said. I can live with that. But my wife and mother-in-law weren't going quietly, not even close. Week 2, after everything exploded, I got served with a restraining order request. My wife was claiming I had been emotionally abusive and controlling throughout our marriage, and that she now feared for her safety. My lawyer was livid when she saw the filing. This is a standard play in ugly divorces, she said. Claim abuse. Get the upper hand in proceedings. Make the other person look dangerous. Do you have any witnesses to your relationship? Anyone who can testify you weren't abusive? I had plenty. Friends who'd known us for years. Co-workers who'd met her at company events and seen how we interacted. And surprisingly, her own sister, who'd always liked me and was apparently furious at how this whole thing was playing out. The restraining order hearing was honestly a joke. My wife showed up looking like a frightened rabbit, dressed simply, no makeup, speaking in this soft, trembling voice about how intimidated she'd always felt around me, how she'd been walking on eggshells for years. Then my lawyer presented evidence. Text messages between us showing normal, healthy communication. Photos from vacations where we looked genuinely happy. And the recording of the $1 million offer conversation, where my wife's voice was anything but frightened, where she sounded calculating and opportunistic and perfectly comfortable discussing how to leave me for money. The judge listened to everything, looked at my wife, looked at me, and denied the restraining order. Actually said from the bench, "This appears to be an attempt to gain leverage in divorce proceedings rather than a genuine safety concern." My wife's lawyer looked embarrassed. My wife looked absolutely furious. But the real fireworks were happening on the other side of the family, because my father-in-law's divorce from my mother-in-law was getting spectacularly ugly. 35 years of marriage, significant assets, real estate holdings, investment accounts, properties, and now paternity fraud thrown into the mix. His lawyer was arguing that the entire marriage had been built on a lie, that my mother-in-law had deceived him into raising a child that wasn't his, which constituted fraud. In some states, this can actually affect divorce settlements. It's not just about splitting assets, it's about the fundamental dishonesty that the relationship was built on. My mother-in-law's response? She went nuclear, started telling everyone who would listen that my father-in-law was the real villain in all this, that he'd been a cold, neglectful husband who drove her to seek comfort elsewhere, that he was now abandoning his family over ancient history that didn't even matter anymore. She conveniently left out the part where she'd spent 35 years lying about paternity. Left out the part where she'd tried to bribe her daughter into divorcing me. Left out, everything else that made her look bad. But here's where karma really started to kick in. My father-in-law had his lawyer subpoena financial records, standard procedure in a big divorce, and what they found was interesting. Turns out my mother-in-law had been skimming money for years. Nothing massive, maybe 20 or 30,000 here and there, but consistently funneling it into a separate account she'd never disclosed. She'd been building her own little nest egg, probably planning an exit strategy that she never actually executed. This was a huge deal legally. Hidden assets in a divorce? Judges absolutely hate that. It tanks your credibility completely and can seriously affect how assets get divided. You're supposed to disclose everything. When you hide money, it looks like you're trying to cheat the system. Because you are. But the real bombshell came from a completely unexpected source, the tennis instructor. Yeah, he was still alive. 70-something now, retired, living off a modest pension somewhere. My father-in-law's lawyer tracked him down and got a deposition. And this man, he confirmed everything. Confirmed the affair, confirmed the timeline, and then he dropped a bomb that nobody saw coming. My mother-in-law had contacted him 15 years ago, asking for money to keep quiet about their history. She'd been blackmailing him on and off for a decade and a half. $30,000 total over the years, in exchange for her silence. That's where some of her hidden money had come from. Not just skimming from joint accounts, actual blackmail. My father-in-law was devastated all over again when he found out. Not just that his wife had cheated, not just that the daughter he'd raised wasn't biologically his, but that she'd been running schemes and lies for their entire marriage. Running cons, manipulating people, being someone completely different from who he thought she was. I never really knew her, he told me during one of our conversations. We'd actually gotten closer through all this, which is strange how things work out sometimes. 35 years, and I was married to a complete stranger. Meanwhile, my wife was spiraling. That $1 million offer from her mom? Yeah, that evaporated real quick once the divorce started and all her mother's assets got frozen in litigation. Without my income, without the comfortable life she'd grown accustomed to, she was stuck. She'd been working as a part-time interior design consultant, which really meant she occasionally helped her mom's rich friends pick out throw pillows and got paid for it. That income wasn't going to sustain the lifestyle she wanted. Not even close. She tried crawling back. Showed up at the apartment one evening about 4 weeks in, tear-streaked and apologetic. "I made a mistake," she said. "I should never have listened to my mom. Can't we work this out?" "You agreed to divorce me for money," I said. "You said I was something you were settling for." Those were your words. I didn't mean it. I was confused. My mom was in my ear constantly. "Your mom can't make you say things you don't mean. You meant it. You just didn't expect there'd be consequences." "Please," she said. And now she was really crying. "I have nowhere to go. You have your mom's place, or your dad's, or literally anywhere else. This isn't my problem anymore. I'll tell everyone you forced me out." "Go ahead," I said. "I have recordings, witnesses, and a paper trail showing exactly what happened. Who do you think people are going to believe?" She left, but not without throwing a vase at the wall on her way out, shattering it into pieces. Thankfully, it was her vase, something she'd bought before we got married. I documented the damage anyway, took photos, added it to the file my lawyer was building. You can never have too much evidence. 6 weeks later, both divorces were finalized, mine and my father-in-law's. Here's where everyone ended up. My father-in-law's divorce was brutal but decisive. Given the fraud, the hidden assets, the blackmail scheme, the paternity lie, the judge ruled heavily in his favor. My mother-in-law got a settlement. She wasn't left destitute or anything, but it was way less than she would have gotten in a standard divorce. About 30% of what she'd been expecting, according to what I heard through the grapevine. He's doing okay now. Sold the big house they'd shared, the mansion with the tennis court and the pool. Bought something smaller, simpler. We actually grab lunch once a month now, which would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. He told me he doesn't blame me for exposing the truth. Said he wishes he'd known decades ago, so he could have made different choices. "You gave me the hardest gift anyone's ever given me," he said during one of our lunches. "The truth. I hate it, but I needed it." He's in therapy now, working through the realization that his entire marriage was built on sand. That the woman he thought he knew was someone completely different. That decades of his life were based on a lie. It's going to take time, maybe years, but he's facing it head on, which is more than a lot of people would do. Here's the complicated part, though. He still loves my wife. Not biologically his daughter, but he raised her. 30 years of memories don't disappear because of a DNA test. He changed her diapers, taught her to ride a bike, walked her down the aisle at our wedding. That doesn't just vanish. They're working on their relationship now. It's strained. She's angry at him for divorcing her mother, for abandoning the family. Delusion runs deep in that family, apparently. He's hurt that she chose money over her marriage, that she was willing to throw me away for a check. But there's something there worth saving. Maybe they'll figure it out. I hope they do. My mother-in-law? She's living in a condo now instead of the mansion she was used to. Still has money. The settlement wasn't nothing, but her lifestyle took a massive hit. From what I hear through mutual acquaintances, she's still telling anyone who'll listen that she's the victim in all this. That her husband overreacted to one mistake from decades ago. That I manipulated everyone with fake evidence because I'm vindictive. Nobody's really buying it, though. Her social circle has quietly dropped her. Turns out rich people don't love associating with someone whose dirty laundry got aired so publicly. The tennis instructor situation came out during the divorce proceedings, which became somewhat public record. Hard to play the victim when there's a paper trail of you blackmailing your former affair partner. She tried to contact me once after everything was finalized. Left a voicemail on my phone. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed a family. You'll pay for this someday. Karma's real." I saved the voicemail just in case. You never know when you might need evidence of continued harassment. My ex-wife? This is the part people keep asking me about in messages. Our divorce was relatively clean compared to her parents' situation. Short marriage, no kids, clear paper trail of her agreeing to take money to leave me. The judge granted the divorce with minimal spousal support. 6 months, reduced amount, just enough to help her transition to being financially independent. She's living with a friend now, sharing an apartment. Her interior design business hasn't exactly taken off. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, she's talking about going back to school for something more practical, maybe accounting or business management. She still blames me for everything, refuses to acknowledge that she made choices that led to this outcome. In her version of events, which I hear about occasionally through people who know both of us, I'm the villain who weaponized information to destroy her family out of spite. Some people will never see themselves clearly. They'll always find a way to be the victim in their own story. She's one of those people. The $1 million offer, by the way. Her mother never would have paid it. Not in a million years. It was a manipulation tactic, pure and simple. My mother-in-law had maybe $200,000 in her secret account, most of which went to legal fees during the divorce. The $1 million was always a lie, a carrot dangled to get my wife to make a choice she might not have made otherwise. And my wife fell for it completely. As for me, I'm okay, not great, not terrible, just okay. The apartment feels bigger now, quieter. I kept most of the furniture since I'd paid for it anyway. Changed a few things around to make it feel less like ours and more like mine. New couch, different layout, painted one of the walls a color she would have hated. Small things, but they help. My friends have been solid through all this. My family's been incredibly supportive, though my mom keeps trying to set me up with her coworker's daughter. She's lovely, very stable, has a good job, doesn't come from a crazy family. Mom, I just got divorced. Give me a minute. Works fine. Nobody there really knew the full story, and I prefer it that way. I just showed up, did my job, went home, kept my head down and focused on the work. It's actually been good having something normal and predictable to focus on. Am I happy? Honestly, I don't know yet. There's relief, definitely. No more mother-in-law from hell making comments at every family gathering. No more pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. No more walking on eggshells wondering what criticism was coming next. But there's also loss. 5 years is a long time. Even if the ending was garbage, there were good moments somewhere in there. There had to be. Vacations we took, lazy Sunday mornings, inside jokes that don't make sense anymore. My therapist, yeah, I'm seeing a therapist now, says it's completely normal to grieve even when a relationship needed to end. That you can mourn what you thought you had, even if it turned out to be an illusion. I'm working on believing that. Working on processing everything that happened. Do I regret exposing the DNA situation? No, not even a little bit. Maybe it was nuclear. Maybe it caused a lot of pain, but the lies had already caused pain, just quiet, hidden pain that festered for decades. I ripped the bandage off. It hurt like hell. But at least now everyone's dealing with reality instead of fiction. At least now everyone knows the truth and can make decisions based on what's real instead of what they thought was real. My father-in-law thanked me again last week at lunch, said that knowing the truth, as painful as it's been, was better than living a comfortable lie for the rest of his life. I think he's right. To everyone who's been asking if I feel bad for what happened, here's my honest answer. I feel bad for my father-in-law, who genuinely didn't deserve any of this. He was a good man who worked hard, built a successful business, and got lied to for 35 years by someone he trusted. I feel bad for myself, honestly, for wasting 5 years on someone who saw me as a settlement, as someone she was doing a favor by being with. But my mother-in-law, my ex-wife, they made their choices. Every step of the way they had options and they chose the worst ones. They valued money over relationships. They built lives on lies and manipulation. They thought they could treat people like garbage without any consequences. They were wrong. That's not revenge. That's not me being vindictive. That's just reality catching up to choices they made freely. Thanks for following this whole mess. I'm going to log off for a while, get my head straight, focus on myself for once. Maybe I'll actually take my mom up on meeting that coworker's daughter. Just kidding, way too soon for that. But eventually, I'll be ready to try again, just not today.